It's been a week of intense scrutiny for RT, with this channel attacked left, right and centre as Kremlin propaganda. RT's Daniel Hawkins investigates.
RT has been in the spotlight for a while, under fire from government officials, the media, even think tanks. Here are some recent highlights. Boris Johnson led the charge in the UK House of Commons with an attack on opposition MPs who've appeared on this channel.
If you study the output of Russia today, it is a scandal that members of the party opposite are continuing to validate and legitimate that kind of propaganda by going on those programs.
But amid his fierce criticism, the Foreign Secretary appears to have missed out a bit of important information. His own Conservative colleagues have also appeared as guests on the channel, as well as someone closer to home. His own father, Stanley Johnson, was interviewed by Going Underground host Afshan Rattansi just last month. The Times newspaper claims there are now calls by the Labour Party for Ofcom, that's the UK media watchdog, to investigate RT's advertising campaign on the London Underground. They even contacted us for our take on the matter, later saying our press office refused to comment. Except we did.
2 questions. Do you wish to respond to this complaint? Which advertising agency created the adverts for RT, or were they made in-house?
Hi. Probably not much point in responding to a complaint to an authority that does not regulate out-of-door advertising. The ad campaign was developed in-house by the RT team and fully approved by all UK vendors. We are glad that so many in the UK are engaging with our advertising.
Understood. Thanks for swift response.
And it gets better. One think tank recently completed the mammoth task of compiling a list of all the thousands of guests who've appeared on our shows ever. From politicians and journalists to academics and celebrities, it even groups them into categories and then dismisses them as useful idiots.
Many people in Europe and the US, including politicians and other persons of influence, continue to exhibit troubling naivety about RT's political agenda. These useful idiots remain oblivious to RT's intentions and boost its legitimacy by granting interviews on its shows and newscasts.
So, on the useful idiot list are John McCain, one of the most vocal critics of Russia. Even film director Rob Reiner gets a mention in the celebrity section. He's now part of an organisation called the Committee to Investigate Russia. That's not to mention US Senator and former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, as well as none other than the current American president, Donald Trump. I guess that's finally the smoking gun of Russian election influence. Former First Lady Michelle Obama gets a mention, although her name only appears in the programme description. She was never an actual guest. Checking the episode would have confirmed this. And back to Boris Johnson himself, he's listed on the report's official RT guest list taken from website descriptions for the comedy show News Thing. Well, they may want to double-check that one as well.
It's Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson. Boris, welcome.
Yeah, hello there, hello.
Are we going to get a chance, Boris, to fight the Spanish before America and Russia kill us all?
Well, this whole Gibraltar business is been blown completely out of proportion.
Now, the report is sponsored by George Soros, as well as the UK and US embassies in the Czech Republic. It certainly spares no criticism of those giving interviews on this channel.
We decided to ask some of our guests that were mentioned in that list of useful idiots how they feel about that description.
The development is somehow tragic. It gets more and more aggressive across Europe, the political debates. And one of these games they are playing is they are destroying the reputation of politicians they don't like.
I don't think that it's fair to say that we are simply here as Russian stooges. I am not anti-Russian, but sometimes I'm quite critical of Russia over Syria and over the detention of political prisoners like Ildar Dadin and others.
You know, of course, everybody has their agendas, but RT, I think, has certainly not tried to constrain my expression or the expression of many other people I know work with the network.
We speak our mind, and we're critical of the West when it's appropriate, and we're critical of Russia when it's appropriate.
The reality is that as a dissident voice in the UK that only very rarely gets any airtime in the mainstream media, RT is the only place that has been providing a regular platform for what used to be dissident voices in the UK, but are now much more mainstream voices.
The recent attacks on RT come amid a Russian meddling frenzy, the latest incarnation of which comes from Britain, where a Labour Party MP has called for a probe into Moscow's alleged interference in the Brexit vote.
Given the widespread public concern over foreign and particularly Russian interference in Western democracies, will she assure this House that the government and the Electoral Commission will examine these reports very carefully and reassure our country that all of the resources spent in the referendum were from permissible sources?
Anti-Russia hysteria has been making headlines for months. It started with alleged Moscow meddling in the US election, and then it moved on to the French and then the German votes. And there have even been suggestions that Russians hacked the Catalan independence vote. Russian President Vladimir Putin says it's all part of a very deliberate campaign launched around the time of Donald Trump's victory.
It's the US who put up with this unprecedented anti-Russian campaign, which was not provoked by anything. Someone lost the elections to Mr. Trump, and Russia was blamed for this. Then they unfolded this anti-Russian hysteria, and now any failure will be connected to us.
And one of the loudest complaints is coming from the politician who claims that Russian interference cost her the American presidency.
In Germany, members of parliament have been hacked by Russians. In France, Macron's campaign was hit by a massive cyber attack just before their presidential election.
Do you have any evidence that Russian hackers are hacking your emails?
No.
It's not possible to say it's obviously a state, it's obviously a criminal group, it really can be anyone. In the attack itself, the simplicity of the technical part can make us think it's just a simple person who created it, and so this person can be in any country with any kind of motivation.
You've even seen the ads in the London Underground from one Russian state-funded propaganda source bragging, "Watch RT and find out who we are planning to hack next." The fact is, they are also opening a new Scottish bureau.
Goes to show you yet again the hysteria, the absolute mind-boggling hysteria that occurs whenever the word Russian, whenever it's even mentioned, people say, aha, Russians, they're at it again. How are they at it again? I don't know, but you know how they are. Who? The Russians. What Russians? Those Russians.
We're back in just a moment.